John Miller, the previous FBI assistant director and NYPD intelligence chief, believes the blood evidence is the critical factor here. That evidence suggests the operation went sideways right on the doorstep before the perpetrators could execute their original scheme. Everything that followed, from the letters to the radio silence, might have been fabricated to justify an event that had already transpired, designed to conceal the harm done rather than retrieve Nancy. Neither expert is declaring her deceased, and I am not either. I need to state that explicitly because real people are suffering behind this analysis, including Savannah, Cameron, and Annie, who remain desperate for resolution, having pleaded before the media and sacrificed everything they own. My point is that the initial media narrative, suggesting an abductor is holding Nancy captive while awaiting a payout, has silently ceased to be the prevailing perspective among professional investigators. A more difficult reality is taking its place, beginning with the query Tracy Walder had the courage to voice publicly. Who possessed a motive to harm Savannah Guthrie so severely that they would target her mother? While the public lacks a response to that inquiry, a private answer might already exist. If detectives are executing the forensics and genealogy tracing as John Miller claims, the truth could be nearer than we think. Nancy and her kin warrant justice. If this analysis deepened your grasp of the situation, please subscribe and enable notifications, as I will report on every major update in this ongoing case. Catch you in the next one. Once you catch this one specific fact about the case, it is going to stick in your head forever. Forget the blood stains on the entryway for a second, even though we will circle back and ignore the stranger messing with the security feed. I am not even talking about how the ransom demands just cut off instantly. The real game changer is actually right here. Whoever grabbed Nancy Guthrie never offered a single shred of proof that she was still breathing. Zero photos, no audio clips, and definitely no handwritten letters have surfaced to show she is okay. Everyone claims she was snatched. Police ran with the abduction theory from day one, and the news networks blasted that same angle 24/7. However, an ex-federal agent and intelligence officer went on record stating plainly that she doubts this was some robbery that went sideways. Then she dropped another bombshell, touching on a subject that everyone else is too scared to even whisper. Her theory suggests this entire tragedy unfolded specifically due to actions taken by Savannah Guthrie herself. I will hold off on explaining the implications for a moment, because you really have to see the clues exactly how she saw them first. You have to experience that chilling deduction process that brought her to such a heavy realization. After that, I will lay out exactly what a top-tier police analyst from CNN stated officially about the situation. This guy, a former high-ranking counter-terror boss at the NYPD, thinks the whole abduction narrative was likely fabricated to cover up a fatal mistake. Both specialists looked at this from separate angles but arrived at the same silent verdict: Nancy Guthrie might not have been taken by anyone. Here is the sequence of events they kept quiet before diving into the hypothesis. Let me walk you through the actual schedule. Forget the story looped on cable TV. We need the factual breakdown that actually impacts our investigation into this 84-year-old woman. As you know, she gave birth to Savannah Guthrie, the famous face co-hosting the Today Show on NBC. Her home sits on a remote plot of land tucked away in the Catalina foothills, right on the edge of Tucson, Arizona. It is an isolated spot with very few cameras pointing at the road and almost zero cars after dark. On Saturday, January 31st, she ate with relatives. After her kids drove her back that night, Sheriff Chris Nanos of Pima County called her incredibly bright and totally with it. Even so, she moved slowly, took heart pills every day, and relied on a pacemaker. Keep that device in mind. During the transition from January 31st to early February 1st, an incident occurred, and at 1:47 a.m., her video doorbell cut out. It was not a technical error or bad reception. Someone physically ripped the lens right off the wall bracket. In the video released later, you can see a disguised person using plants to block the view right before the feed dies. This was a calculated move by someone who was fully aware of the surveillance and intent on disabling it. Even if the device had remained intact, Nancy had let her paid cloud storage plan expire a while ago. Nothing was being uploaded to the server as it happened. Federal agents only managed to get clips because tech experts salvaged bits and pieces from the internal cache memory. Whoever watched the house likely figured out that 41 minutes after the video failed, her heart monitor stopped talking to her smartphone. Consider the implications here. That implant sends vital heart stats over the air to a hub that alerts her doctors. So when the signal drops at 2:28 a.m., it means she was either moved out of range or she suffered a medical crisis right then. Regardless of the cause, the entire event inside the residence was definitely finished by 2:28 in the morning. Family realized she was gone later on February 1st after she missed her regular online prayer meeting with friends. Officers pulled up to the scene and immediately spotted a disturbing clue right near the entrance. Lab tests later proved the red stains belonged specifically to Nancy Guthrie. Over the next few weeks, that gruesome fact got buried under other headlines, but we really need to focus on it. Finding biological evidence at the doorstep is not a minor footnote. It is the starting point of the mystery we are unraveling right now. The Bureau also made public a video clip salvaged from the device's backup memory. It shows a person wearing a ski mask with gloves sealed under cuffs and trousers pulled down over their boots. Experts say this outfit was chosen to leave zero DNA behind, and the suspect carried a gun along with a 25-liter rucksack. That is not a tote for stealing laptops or jewelry. It is a serious pack meant for a lengthy mission. It had plenty of room for zip ties, cords, and whatever else required to transport a person rather than goods. Agents profiled the suspect as a man of medium build, standing around 5'9" or 5'10". Not a single camera nearby caught a car driving away from the scene while the crime was happening. Police scoured the area for video from January 1st to February 2nd, begging neighbors within 2 miles to review their tapes. The sole tangible clue pointing that way was a single mitt discovered 2 miles from the residence, appearing visually identical to the hand coverings in the surveillance video, so they shipped it off to an independent facility down in Florida. Subsequently, the demand letters started appearing, and that is precisely the moment this investigation begins to split at the seams. These extortion messages simply do not act the way typical ransom notes usually act. I want to pose a specific query to you right now. Suppose you snatched a person, held them living in some secret spot, and desired cash. Exactly who are you going to reach out to? The solution is plain as day. You would get in touch with their relatives straight away and keep it hushed. You would establish a covert line of communication. You would provide a digit sequence to dial, an electronic address for response, a method to place funds in your grip and retrieve the captive. That is the standard procedure. That is the way it has operated forever. However, that is absolutely not the scenario that unfolded in this instance. The initial demand landed at TMZ and simultaneously at 2 local broadcast channels in Tucson, specifically KGUN and KD. The writer insisted on $6 million paid out in Bitcoin. They established a strict cutoff time of 5 o'clock in the evening on the 9th of February. The message contained precise particulars concerning the location of the offense, mentioning the victim's smart wristwatch, information that the networks characterized as appearing to originate from an individual possessing firsthand familiarity with the residents and the events that transpired within those walls. This missive cautioned that there would be 0 subsequent contact attempted and that police authorities were powerless to assist. Crucially, the letter offered absolutely no method for the relatives to reply, lacking any return electronic mail, missing a telephone contact, and failing to list a drop-off site. In the phrasing used by the senior police commentator at CNN, this communication was effectively a monologue rather than a dialogue. An extortion letter that prohibits any form of rejoinder is simply not a ransom note. It is a declaration. Consequently, the Guthrie clan reacted in a truly extraordinary manner. They transformed their online platforms into a public bargaining room. Hello to everyone out there. I felt the need to hop on here and briefly express some sentiments as we begin yet another 7 days of this living hell. Primarily, I wish to express my immense gratitude for every single prayer and the affection that has touched us, speaking for my siblings and myself, and that our mother has sensed, because we hold the conviction that by some method she is perceiving these spiritual petitions, and that the Lord is elevating her spirit even right now during this incredibly bleak situation. We maintain the faith that our mother remains alive somewhere. We require your assistance. The authorities are laboring without rest all day and night, attempting to return her to us, attempting to locate her. She was abducted, and we lack knowledge of the location. We truly require your aid. Therefore, I am appearing here to request not only your spiritual support, but regardless of your location, even distant from Tucson, should you spot something or listen to something, if any single detail appears peculiar to your eyes, please convey that information to the police immediately. We have reached a point of utter hopelessness, and we must have your support. Savannah, alongside her sibling Cameron and sister Annie, uploaded multiple clips speaking straight to the person who grabbed Nancy, making her real, begging, demanding evidence of her survival. In a specific clip, Savannah sits by herself, stating, "We realize she might be gone forever. She might have passed away already. There is a person in the world who holds information capable of returning her. A specific individual is aware, and we are imploring you to kindly step into the light." Listen, this is a child who has heard in some way that the chances are slim, yet she remained before the lens and invited an abductor to talk during the entire ordeal, despite every request, every recording, and every cash prize offer. The sender of those demands never supplied a picture, a sound recording, a scribbled note, or any type of verification whatsoever proving that Nancy Guthrie was breathing. Federal agents verified on the record by the middle of February that they knew of zero active dialogue linking the Guthrie clan to an abductor. The time limits expired. Another missive landed at Cole. Lacking fresh stipulations or evidence of survival, it seemed to be a response to the online clips instead of a monetary extortion attempt. Then everything went quiet. Currently, a guy has been detained for mailing an unrelated fake letter. That is verified fact. That specific message was a fraud, totally unlinked to the main inquiry. Therefore, not all correspondence floating around was authentic. However, the initial letters sent to TMZ, KGUN, and Cole D were handled with such gravity that the police replied personally. Those documents held precise data, they were genuine enough to count, and they ceased coming. The head police and intel commentator for CNN, once a second in command at the NYPD and a past assistant director at the Bureau, plus a previous high-ranking leader in United States national intelligence, posed a public query that I need you to remember. Is it possible an individual drafted an extortion letter to mask a break-in where the target got badly hurt just to save their own skin? This inquiry is far from theoretical. He is challenging detectives and the general population to weigh the chance that these demand letters were not the start of the offense, they were the camouflage. The stains tell a story. Let us return to the subject of the blood. The team from News Nation found it first. A grim path of red droplets was found trailing from the main entrance of Nancy Guthrie's residence. This discovery occurred only after the authorities had formally returned the property to the family, clearly visible on the driveway and veranda. Puma County Sheriff Chris Nanos went on record to verify this finding, and genetic analysis confirmed the biological matter belonged to Nancy. Digital photographers from Fox News captured images of those blood spatters, which eventually drew the attention of forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Bowden, a legendary figure in American forensic history, reviewed those pictures and provided a detailed breakdown of his observations. He pointed out the specific formation of the spots, noting the light centers that experts in the field refer to as donut pattern. According to him, that shape usually results from blood dripping off a nose or mouth, where air mixes in during the fall to create a hollow core. Nancy Guthrie was definitely bleeding from a specific region, likely her face or possibly her hands, he concluded. He went on to emphasize that the quantity, shape, and porch location of the stains ruled out any innocent explanation. Instead, the evidence lines up perfectly with the signs of a forced abduction in progress. It points squarely to an abduction, and it is important to understand that abduction differs significantly from kidnapping. Kidnapping suggests a transaction where someone is held for leverage, while abduction simply means being snatched against one's will. Whatever the motive, consider the timeline. Relatives dropped Nancy off at her house on the evening of January 31st. Her security camera feed was cut abruptly at 1:47 in the morning. It was disabled by an intruder who had been lying in wait on the grounds, armed and carrying a pack, ready to strike in the dead of night. At 2:28 a.m., the digital link between Nancy's pacemaker and her smartphone failed completely. Right at the main entrance, her blood lies in a pattern that experts say indicates a head or face wound caused by a physical fight. Violence definitely visited Nancy Guthrie right there on her own porch. The encounter was swift and brutal enough to draw blood from her facial area. This occurred within the 41-minute gap between the camera cut and the pacemaker signal loss, a time frame police focused on heavily. On one occasion, detectives were seen lingering on the walkway and porch, examining that exact area for quite a while. Neighborhood security cameras failed to record any suspect vehicle leaving the area after the incident. Authorities requested that homeowners within a 2-mile radius review their footage for anything out of the ordinary. No video of a car linked to the crime has surfaced publicly, forcing us to ask a very unsettling question. Did the perpetrator simply walk away on foot? Did they have help that somehow dodged every lens in the vicinity? Or did the plan fail so quickly that the escape route was abandoned? That final possibility is what I want to discuss, specifically regarding the expert who ruled it out. Let me introduce you to a professional who isn't just a pundit or a podcaster killing time between commercials. She served for years as a special agent with the FBI, specializing in counterterrorism. Later, she moved to the CIA to continue her work at a classification level most people will never know about. Her entire career focused on analyzing how dangerous individuals plot crimes meant to coerce, control, or terrorize. When the news broke, she sat down with Brian Entin from News Nation to provide a detailed breakdown. Her insights made waves in the true crime world, though the mainstream media largely overlooked them. She stated firmly that she does not believe this was a botched burglary, and here is why that is significant. In mid-February, a local Arizona station quoted a source claiming police had privately pivoted to the theory of a theft gone wrong. The sheriff's department in Puma County issued a denial within hours. They clarified that they never classified the incident as a failed burglary and labeled any such reports as false. The FBI backed this up, and Sheriff Nanos personally told Fox News that the information did not originate from them. Her reasoning was simple. Burglars generally do not kidnap the residents or take victims along with them. She explained that it rarely happens because it hinders their escape, which makes sense if you consider the logistics: enter the home, grab the goods, and vanish. Dragging a person along, especially an 84-year-old with mobility issues, completely changes the mission, adding noise and delay. It turns a simple theft into a federal kidnapping case with a life sentence, a risk no seasoned crook takes lightly. She also highlighted the significance of the 25-liter hiking backpack the intruder was wearing. If you plan to steal gadgets or jewelry, you bring suitable bags, not a backcountry hiking pack. You pack gear like that when you need space, straps, and the capacity to haul a heavy load right on your back. This isn't the kind of place you just stumble across and choose to hit on a whim. She made that clear. Tracy Walder is her name. I really need to address the ongoing theories regarding this fresh image because there is so much guesswork out there. People are totally confused about why the FBI put that picture out without confirming exactly when it was taken. The whole situation feels incredibly strange. Maybe they dropped the shot to show a new angle or give us a better view of the guy, but you are absolutely correct. It certainly muddies the waters because, if you recall, about 10 to 14 days ago, they asked neighbors for doorbell footage from weeks before the incident. So I'm curious if they pulled that specific date from this image, even though I clearly don't have hard evidence to back that up. It would definitely help calm everyone down to know if this was a specific hit or just a random crime of opportunity. You make a solid point there, Tracy, considering they explicitly requested security footage covering the whole month of January. Then they turned around and asked everyone to look specifically at January 11th. That really fueled the rumor mill, especially with sources contacting News Nation and other outlets to talk. They are claiming that the second release photo showing the guy without a pack or weapon was actually from a separate night. If it was a different night, that suggests he was definitely casing the property beforehand, 100%. I've said from day one that this looked highly targeted and that this individual had clearly visited the home before. Sure, blocking the camera lens with brush seems a bit crude, but I also believe this guy knew what he was doing. He had likely been studying the daily routines and activity at the house for at least a month before making a move. He took his time picking that specific date. I really think it was someone either angry about something Savannah Guthrie did or obsessed with her, which is why they went after her family. Walder noted it feels way too specific, since obsession and retaliation represent totally different threat profiles. Grasping the distinction is crucial for figuring out what might have happened to Nancy and who had a motive to hurt Savannah. I want to be crystal clear about our purpose here. We are not dropping any names. We aren't accusing any specific individual, especially since this is an ongoing federal case with no named suspects yet. If someone claims they know the culprit, they are lying. Tracy Walder is simply highlighting a type of motive. It's not about the who, but rather the type of person capable of this and their reasoning. Those are distinct questions that lead investigators down completely different paths. She flagged a specific category involving a grievance or fixation on Savannah Guthrie that manifested as violence against her kin. Savannah Guthrie is one of the most famous journalists in the States, co-anchoring the Today Show on NBC since 2012. She has led presidential debates and broken huge headlines. She has offered opinions, conducted interviews, and reported on the most controversial political stories of the last 10 years. Her face and voice are part of the daily routine for millions, creating what criminologists term parasocial relationships. These are one-sided bonds where a viewer develops deep feelings for a celebrity who doesn't even know they exist. Most of the time, these connections are totally benign. Occasionally, though rare and well-documented, they turn dangerous. In stalking cases involving public figures, the pattern usually involves a fixation growing over months or years without the target knowing. That obsession ramps up due to imagined insult. Eventually, often sparked by a specific event, that obsession turns into a concrete plan. Research consistently shows that the actual victim of the violence is rarely the famous person. Instead, it's usually an associate who is accessible, easy to locate, and living with less security. Nancy Guthrie's residence wasn't exactly a secret. Her daughter spoke fondly of her in many public appearances, and Nancy even appeared on the show, becoming a known part of Savannah's story. Then there's the second category. Tracy Walder brought up retaliation. A person angry about something Savannah did fits a different profile. They aren't in love with her. They are furious, believing the journalist wronged them professionally, personally, or politically. It boils down to a brutal calculation. The most effective way to destroy someone isn't to hit them directly, but to go after the one person they cherish above all else. Experts in criminal behavior refer to this dynamic as proxy violence, meaning the individual actually suffering the physical blow isn't the primary objective, the public figure is. Pain is inflicted upon a vulnerable party the offender knows is out of reach for the intended target, and targeting a mother sends a uniquely cruel and unmistakable signal. It screams a terrifying declaration. I located the heart of your world, I know exactly where it sleeps, and I got inside before you even had a chance to react. If Savannah was the catalyst for this crime, be it through a stalker's fixation or some twisted revenge, then picking that specific house was absolutely not a matter of chance. Whoever did this had done their homework extensively, learning the rhythms of the street and clearly demonstrating intimate familiarity with that particular neighborhood. This person watched the home long enough to understand the blind spots of the doorbell camera, how to bypass the security system, and exactly which approach path would keep them invisible. The precision is simply too high to be anything else. Coming from a veteran who dedicated her professional life to constructing terrorism indictments, that short phrase lands with heavy authority, and right below the surface lies a disturbing subtext. Assuming Nancy was taken to get at Savannah, those financial demands blasted out to news organizations were never actually about collecting a payout. The goal was pure domination, forcing Savannah to be a spectator and a public participant in the nightmare unfolding around her mother. It was about twisting a reporter into the headline of her own tragedy while she stood by powerless, which completely alters the psychological framework of this event. This isn't a business deal or a crime of opportunity. It is deeply personal in a cold, methodical sense, and that realization shifts our entire perspective. Let's turn our attention to another specialist, the individual who provided the most lucid breakdown of the likely sequence of events inside that residence. John Miller currently holds the title of Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst for the network prior to his media career. He was the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism for the NYPD, where he managed multiple bureaus and the Joint Task Force with the FBI. His resume also includes time as an assistant director at the Bureau, followed by a stint as a deputy assistant director of national intelligence. On the reporting side, his work has been recognized with 2 Peabodys and 11 Emmy Awards. Exactly 1 month into the investigation, he released a comprehensive breakdown of the situation. Within that report, he offered what I consider the most critical insight anyone has voiced regarding the Nancy Guthrie disappearance, and I want to quote him directly. "There is always the chance that this began as a calculated home invasion that spiraled out of control and was subsequently reimagined as a kidnapping for ransom simply because the suspect's original options had evaporated." Let's unpack that statement piece by piece, specifically the distinction between a premeditated home invasion and a standard burglary. In a home invasion, the objective encompasses both the physical structure and the human beings occupying it. The occupant is factored into the scheme as someone to subdue, injure, or use as leverage, but here, things went off the rails. Not a minor hiccup, but a total collapse. No matter what the initial blueprint looked like or what the backpack-clad intruder intended to achieve upon arrival, that agenda fell apart the moment it encountered reality on that front porch, forcing the entire crime to morph into something else on the fly. The scenario that played out was not the one they had drawn up. The perpetrator was forced to wing it. An individual had to assess the chaos in real time and make a split-second, high-pressure choice on how to justify the events that had just transpired. Since the landscape of the crime had shifted, their playbook had to change because the original mission was dead in the water. The actions available to them or required for self-preservation were suddenly vastly different from their intended path. Miller then pointed out a crucial detail, noting, "The key denominator here is the blood outside the front door, which strongly implies that regardless of the original intent, the situation deteriorated almost instantly. The blood is the common denominator. That blood stain is the physical proof that the nature of the offense shifted gear." During those 41 minutes on the porch, the intruder's objective failed right at the threshold. Nancy bled, and from that second on, they were improvising. This explains why the demands were directed to news outlets rather than the victim's relatives. The author of those messages was not holding a hand strong enough to actually bargain. They were drafted by a panicked individual trying to spin a story to cover a mess that had already happened, which also explains why the messages cut off so suddenly. There was never any intention to negotiate. Those letters weren't the strategy. They were the smokescreen deployed when the strategy imploded. Miller posed the question bluntly: why was no proof of life ever provided? Is it possible someone drafted a ransom demand to mask a botched invasion where the victim was critically hurt, desperate to salvage a crime that had gone terribly wrong? Those demands were simply a Hail Mary to recover something from the situation. It was an effort to spin a catastrophe into a business deal, handing the police a distraction, a living hostage, and a price tag, rather than the grim reality. I am not declaring that Nancy Guthrie has passed away, as no official determination has been made to that effect. As of late February, her relatives were still publicly expressing hope for her survival, while the case file remains open and the bounty for information stands. When you combine the insights from both specialists, you start seeing the framework of an offense that wasn't actually straightforward abduction, but rather a scenario staged to resemble one later. If that theory holds water, the perpetrators weren't hunting for a $6 million payout from Savannah Guthrie. They were just looking to escape. As for the current status of the inquiry, here is exactly where things sit today. At the time of this filming, authorities held 2 males for a short interrogation early on, but both walked free within 24 hours. Law enforcement has not officially named either individual as a person of interest. Sheriff Chris Nanos of Pima County verified that Nancy Guthrie's entire inner circle, covering spouses and siblings, has been completely exonerated. Forensic teams collected genetic material from both the interior and exterior, yet neither sample hits a match in the CODIS system. That is the Federal Registry for Convicted Criminals, but a lack of results today doesn't rule out a hit tomorrow. Whenever a suspect gets booked for a felony nationwide and their genetic marker enters the database, the chances for a positive identification increase. Furthermore, detectives are utilizing familial genealogy tracking, meaning that even if the perpetrator is missing from The system, a close relative of theirs, could potentially be listed. They shipped a glove discovered 2 miles away, which looks identical to the pair seen in the doorbell video, to an independent Florida laboratory. The Bureau noted that early testing links the item to the gear worn by the suspect on camera, though final verification is still in progress. Federal agents moved their primary command center from Tucson up to Phoenix. John Miller rejected the notion that this move signals a dead end, insisting the investigation is far from going cold. Instead, the move marks a shift from immediate crisis management to a more methodical, long-term inquiry phase. Detectives are actively pursuing multiple avenues and open leads that have not yet been exhausted. He explained that the $1 million bounty was delayed intentionally, launched only when the first wave of leads slowed down to maximize impact. Miller verified that this tactical decision was made in total lockstep between the relatives and the police force. If you have any information, no matter how insignificant it appears, please contact the Bureau at 1-800-CALL-FBI, which is listed below. Let's synthesize all of this. Assuming you clicked on this video with some prior knowledge of the events. You were already aware of the vanishing, the blood evidence, the demand letters, the disguised intruder, and the quiet aftermath. My goal today was to highlight what two highly experienced security analysts are really implying when you deconstruct their statements, piece by piece, and align them directly against the hard physical proof. Tracy Walder, an ex-CIA officer and former federal agent, argues the offense was far too specific to be a random break-in or crime of opportunity. An individual familiar with Savannah Guthrie and her circles selected this specific residence and victim for the blood on Nancy's doorstep is the key. Dr. Michael Baden, one of the most respected forensic pathologists in the country, identified the pattern as consistent with a face or head wound from a physical struggle. Violence happened on that porch in that 41-minute window between when the camera was destroyed and when her pacemaker went offline. The crime changed shape in those 41 minutes. If the plan went wrong at the front door, the letters sent to newsrooms afterward may have been a panicked attempt to reframe what had already happened. That is not a confirmed conclusion, and it is not declared here as fact. Nancy's family continues to hold on to hope. The investigation remains open. No one has been charged. But these expert frameworks matter because they shape how investigators think and how the public understands what kinds of crimes are even possible. Asterisk, asterisk. When a public figure becomes a target, the people closest to them, the ones with less security and less visibility, are often the ones placed in the most danger. Asterisk, asterisk. Parasocial obsession is a documented psychological pattern. Most people who feel a deep connection to a public figure never act on it, but for a rare few, that fixation can turn dangerous. If you are a public figure journalist, broadcaster, or online creator, take seriously the security of the people in your life who have no security team, no publicist, and no warning system. If an elderly relative lives alone in a known or findable location, talk to them about updating camera subscriptions, adding a daily check-in habit, and reviewing who knows their address. The DNA recovered inside Nancy's home does not match any known criminal in the national database. Forensic genealogy is now being used, the same method that solved the Golden State Killer case. Nancy's entire inner circle has been cleared by investigators. 2 men were briefly detained and released. The case is still active. The leads are still being worked. Savannah, Cameron, and Annie have stood before cameras, not as anchors or public figures, but as children desperate for their mother to come home. Savannah said it herself, on camera alone. There is a person in this world who knows something that could bring her back. We are begging you step into the light. If you have any information, no matter how small it seems, call 1-800-CALL-FBI. The reward now stands at $1 million. Nancy Guthrie has lived a full, bright, independent life. She deserves the truth, and so does her family. Whatever happened on that porch, it did not happen in silence forever. Nancy Guthrie vanished from her Tucson home on February 1st, 2026. Ransom letters followed, deadlines passed. No proof of life was ever provided, not a single photo, voice clip, or note. A real ransom note opens a dialogue. It gives the family a way to respond. A number, an address, a method to pay and retrieve their loved one. These letters had none of that. They were sent to news outlets, not to Nancy's family. They were declarations, not negotiation. Two former intelligence officials looked at the same evidence and independently reached the same conclusion. This crime may not have unfolded the way the public was told. Tracy Walder, former FBI special agent and CIA officer, argued the attack was far too precise to be random. Someone had studied this home, this family, this target for months. She pointed to two possible motives: obsession with Savannah Guthrie or retaliation against her. Both represent a chilling pattern seen in cases involving public figures. John Miller, former FBI assistant director and NYPD intelligence chief, raised a harder question. What if the ransom demand was